Going to talk through the process of outputting all the individual macros to your machine tool with Productivity Plus instead of posting them out every time. So first, let's go through the default behavior. So I have a probe operation here. I can backplot it really quick. Right, it's just coming down, touching 3 points, quick circle, probe. I'm not doing anything with that data, so we're probably going to get a warning on posting. But if I post this out, save it as whatever, yes. So when I post this out, I get the probing window here, right? And I'm going to use the, let me go back to my C, users, public documents, shared 2020, common probe data. This is where the macros or the RenMFs install by default. So I use this default inch. If I hit process, right, we'll get a warning that it's not referenced anywhere because we're not doing anything with the data, but it does succeed. When I hit done, Code Expert's going to pop up, and what you'll notice by default, you have the program, and then you're going to have the macro that whatever this program runs up to the M30, right? There's a few macros in there. Whatever macros it needs are going to come out posted below, right? So those macros get posted below the main. You have to load all these into the control separately. Some controls allow you to do that pretty easily, but you'd have to load those separately up to the control and make sure that they're resident on the control for this to run properly. So instead, let's look at loading every single macro we'll ever need with Productivity Plus first to the machine control, and then we can just post out the main program. So we'll only get a program that's posted out to the M30. So let's look at what it would take to do that. In order to do that, I will launch the RenMF configuration utility. This is the interface that the RenMF lives in. Of course, the RenMF is just a text file, so you can modify that directly in the text file, but it's not as pretty as what we're looking at here. We'll go down to the Program Configuration tab, and here we're outputting the macros. So this is what it means is we're outputting the macros below that M30 like we saw that original behavior. So if I switch this to no, what that's going to allow me to do now is output macros separately, and let's walk through doing that. So I'm going to save this new RenMF, or the same RenMF. Now I'm going to go back into my probing file here. If I hit G1, check, we're just going to resave this as what we had it before. And I'm just going to process this with the default inch, and let's look at the differences here. Okay, we get the same warnings. It succeeded, done. This launches Code Expert. I'll reload. Now look at the difference here, right? M30% sign. So the end of file is here. We're not getting those macros short type program here. But if we load this on the machine and run it, we're going to get a warning because this macro doesn't exist on the machine, right? The 2109, all these different macros aren't on the machine. We've got to load those. So how do we go about doing that? Well, I'm going to go back and repost this again. Okay, and when this posting utility pops up, the post tool, I can use this run macro file wizard. So if I turn this on and hit process, now the only way this is going to work is if I have that switch, if I have this switch set to no. Otherwise, you'll throw a warning here. So this is going to walk me through that process. I need to pick the RenMF file that I want to use. Again, I'll navigate back to my 2020, common, probe data, back to that same RenMF, because that's the RenMF I want to output the macros from. I'll hit next. Where do I want to save this to? I'll save it anywhere, but I'll just go to my desktop and call this macros. Save. Next. View macros. So now it's published all those macros to that file, and those are stored on my desktop right here as a text file right on my desktop. And so now I can look at all these. And right now, this is a list of all the macros all in line with each other, right? So that may or may not be the format you're looking for, depending on how your machine reads the programs in. But we can always go back into the RenMF configuration utility and say, see, right now we have this set to no. With no, it's outputting them all in one file nested together. If I set this to yes, that will output them to separate files on the desktop. So that's how you would go about changing that configuration and how you want the program to look and read into the machine. One caution to be aware of if you're posting this out where you're not outputting the macros, that means that you're relying on the macros being on the machine and being up to date. So if you've done any changes to the machine or deleted a macro or you've updated your Mastercam install, you would have to re-output these macros through that macro file wizard, just as we showed. Otherwise, you risk out-of-date macros and errors and all sorts of unwanted behavior happening there. So that's a caution if you have the setting set to no. The safest bet is to always have that set to yes and output the macros in line with the program. Not all machines even have the capability of doing that, however, so that's what this setting does.